Hello learners, welcome back to the world of economics, and today we shall be studying about statistics. Statistics, as you all know, is very closely related to economics because economics draws a lot from statistics. Today in this session we shall be studying about collection and presentation of data. Yes, so let us understand how statistics will help us in economics. First and foremost, in today's session we will be studying about the meaning of the term data, various types of data, difference between variables and attributes, importance of data, classification and tabulation of data, and various forms of presentation of data. Let us now understand what data is. The quantitative information providing facts in an aggregate manner is known as data. In plural sense, data is also known as statistics. So, statistics is a subject in all. Statistics has certain features and the data collected in it have to undergo these qualities. What are these? Statistics are aggregate of facts first and foremost. Second, statistics are numerically expressed. Third, they are affected to a marked extent by multiplicity of causes. Fourth, they are collected so that they are having a reasonable standard of accuracy, and fifth, they are collected for a predetermined purpose. Now, we need to understand each one of these. The first one, which is statistics as an aggregate of facts. Statistics are a number of facts. Single and isolated figures are not statistics, as such figures cannot be compared. For example, a single age of 30 years is not statistics, but a series relating to the ages of a group of persons will be called statistics. So, statistics are numerically expressed. Let us understand what this means. That the statistical approach to a subject is in itself numerical. So, any facts to be called statistics must be numerically or quantitatively expressed. If Isha is taller than Amita and Ananya, this will not be called statistics. Why? Because this fact is not numerically expressed. However, if the same facts are expressed in numbers, that is, Isha's height is 154 centimeter, Amita's height is 120 centimeters, and Ananya's height is 60 centimeters, then these are statistics. Remember, numerical facts are statistics. Statistics are affected by a multiplicity of causes. That is, numerical figures or data are influenced by a variety of factors. It is not easy to study the effects of any one factor separately by ignoring other factors. For example, production of a crop, say rice, is affected by the rainfall, fertilizer, seeds, method of cultivation, etc. It is not possible to study separately the effect of each of these forces on production. Hence, we can say that statistics are affected by a multiplicity of causes. They are collected according to a reasonable standard of accuracy. That means that 100% accuracy in statistics is neither possible nor desirable. If a doctor has invented a new medicine to control cholesterol and he ascertained that 90% of patients have responded well, then statistically it may be considered that the new medicine is good and it has reasonable standard of accuracy, as the results show that 90% of patients have responded well and not 100%. So, statistics does not go in for 100%, and this is a reasonable standard of accuracy. Now, let us come to the fifth aspect of statistics, and that is that statistics are collected for a predetermined purpose. What does this mean? The purpose of collecting statistical data must be decided in advance. Otherwise, usefulness of the data collected would be negligible. Data collected in any unsystematic manner and without complete awareness of the purpose will be confusing and cannot be made on the basis of valid conclusions. So, we need to know the purpose of the study when we collect any statistical data. Now, let us understand the importance of data in economics. Some specific areas of economics where the use of data is very important are in economic planning, to determine national income, and as a basis of government policies. Let us understand each one of these one by one. In economic planning, the data of the previous years are used to prepare future plans. For example, if we have to plan for an expenditure to be incurred on primary education for a year, data regarding number of students who were enrolled up to class 5 in previous years and the expenditure incurred during those years is to be looked into. Forecasting is also done on the basis of economic planning. Let us come to the second use of statistics in economics, and that is to determine national income. In order to know the state of an economy, one must know the national income besides the various other estimates. National income is determined by using quantitative information of productive activities such as wages and salaries received by workers, rent received for use of land and building, interest received for use of funds, and profit earned by the entrepreneurs in economic planning. Statistics is also used as a basis for government policies. Statistical data are widely used by government to frame policies for economic development of the country. On the basis of data on the vast number of poor and unemployed people in India, the government framed the policy to overcome poverty and employment as the very popular the National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. So, use of statistics in economics is very clear to each one of us. There is another example as the Census of India, which provides data on male and female population, literacy rate, number of workers, etc. On the basis of this data, it was found that India has 938 females per 1000 males. On the basis of this data, the government is working on a policy to save the girl child. So, statistics is definitely useful in the subject of economics. Let us now understand more of statistics. What are the types of data we have in statistics? On the basis of the source of collection of data, data may be classified as primary data or secondary data. Let us now understand what primary data is. Primary data which are originally collected for the first time for the purpose of the survey are primary data. For example, facts or data collected regarding the habit of taking tea or coffee in a village by an investigator will be considered as primary data. Now let us understand the methods of collecting primary data. Primary data can be collected with the use of 5 methods. First is direct personal investigation, second indirect investigation, third through correspondence, fourth through mailed questionnaire, and fifth through schedules. Let us understand the first one, which is direct personal investigation. Now, direct personal investigation is when the investigator collects data by having direct contact with the informant and conducts on the spot inquiry from the respondent. The person who collects the information is called the investigator, and the person who gives the responses to the investigator is called a respondent. The data collected in this manner are therefore most reliable. However, there is a chance that the results are influenced by the personal bias and prejudice of the investigator. Here we can see an indirect personal investigation happening. In case of an indirect investigation, the investigator obtains information indirectly from a third person who is expected to know facts about the person about whom the inquiry is done. It is generally used by commissions appointed by the government. Even in case of an accident, say for example, the police may use this. The third method is through correspondence. Correspondents or agents are appointed by the investigator to obtain data from various places. These correspondents are required to collect and pass or transmit information to the investigator or to the central office. This method is widely used in newspaper offices. The fourth method is the mailed questionnaire method. In this method, a well-structured questionnaire is prepared and mailed to the respondents by post. The respondents, after filling up the questionnaire, send it back within the given time. However, this method can only be used when respondents are literate and are able to fill in the questionnaire themselves. So, this gives rise to the fifth method, which is through schedules. As we can see, people go and collect information. Such people are known as field workers. The field workers are asked to go to the respondent with questions contained in the schedule. They collect the answers in their own handwriting and provide data to the investigator. This method is useful when the respondent is illiterate. Now we need to understand secondary data. When we use the data which have already been collected by others, the data are called secondary data. This data is said to be primary for the agency which collects it first, and it becomes secondary for all other users. Let us understand about secondary data. As we can see, secondary data is also through either published sources or unpublished sources. Published sources are ones that may be available as different publications. Now, here is a exhausted list of all the publications that can be considered as secondary sources when we are collecting data. First is published reports of newspapers, RBI and periodicals, publication from trade associations, financial data reported in annual reports, data available in SEBI publications, information from official publications, publication of international bodies such as UNO, World Bank, etc., and in economics we use a lot of information from these and all others. The unpublished sources are the internal reports by the government departments, records maintained by institutions, and research reports prepared by students in universities. So, we have data. Now, we need to present it. How do we present data? Data presentation is important because data collected in the form of schedules and questionnaires etc. are not self-explanatory. These are in the form of raw data. In order to make them meaningful, these are to be made presentable. Classification and tabulation are the basic tools of presenting raw data in a systematic manner. As explained, mass data in its original form is called raw data. Classification is a process of arranging data into classes or groups according to their resemblances and affinities. Data which is capable of being classified in the magnitude of time or size is called a variable. Variable may be either discrete or continuous. Let us understand discrete variable first. Variables which are capable of taking only exact value and not any fractional value are termed as discrete variables. For example, number of students in class are discrete variable as they cannot be turned into fractions. You can see here number of children, all either 1, 2 or 3, cannot be 2.5 or 3.5. Continuous variables, these variables which can take all the possible values, integral as well as fractional, in a given specified range are termed as continuous variables. Thus, the height or weight of individuals can be of any value within the limits. Now, let us understand the meaning of attributes, because not all data is a variable. Attributes are those facts which cannot be expressed in numerical terms. When data cannot be classified in the magnitude of time or size, it is known as an attribute, such as beauty, bravery, intelligence, laziness, etc. Attributes are difficult to be investigated in depth. These can be numbered for a study having a limited purpose. Let us now understand the different statistical series. The arrangement of classified data in some logical order, like according to the size, according to time of occurrence, or according to some other measurable or non-measurable characteristics, is known as statistical series. There are 3 types of series into which data can be organized. These are individual series, discrete series, and continuous series. Let us understand each one of these series one by one. First and foremost, individual series. Individual series, as we can see here from the presentation, are either in an ascending manner, that is, it's like going up the steps, or in a descending manner, it's like coming down the stairs. Such as marks obtained by 8 students in a class are given in the table alongside. We can arrange this in some order as shown. This is an individual series. Each item has its separate individual entity and there is no interim value or any other probability. So, this is an individual series where items occur on their own. Let us understand now a discrete series. It is a much better way of presentation of data In a discrete series, it is a series such that individual values differ from each other by definite amount. As we can see here, marks 30, 40, 50, 60, there is a definite amount given. In a discrete frequency distribution, various values of the variables are shown along with their corresponding frequencies. Here we can see how many students got 30 marks? 4. How many got 40 marks? 6, and so on. So, in discrete series, very definite values appear with their respective frequencies. Now, what about understanding what do we mean by frequency? Frequency refers to the repetitiveness of a value or item. If a particular value x appears 4 times in a set of data, x will have a frequency of 4. Theoretically, this kind of series is prepared only for a discrete variable. However, in practice, continuous and discrete variables are used interchangeably. So, let us understand a continuous variable now. These variables are ones which can take all the possible values as shown, and examples are the height or weight of individuals. Continuous series may be constructed using inclusive method or exclusive method. Now, so continuous series are also of 2 kinds. In case of inclusive series, frequency corresponding to the upper limit of a group is included in the same group, while it is included in subsequent group in case of exclusive series. Let us now understand each one of these individually. An inclusive series, as we can see, the upper limit of a class is not continuing as the lower limit of the next class. There is a gap. So, inclusive series is the series in which the value of upper limit of a class never equals the value of lower limit of the next class. Under this series, data is classified in such a way that both lower and upper limits of a class interval are included in the interval itself. For example, any number corresponding to 10 will be included in this class, and any number corresponding with 19 will also be included in this class. However, this is not true in case of exclusive series. In case of exclusive series, the upper limit of one class interval becomes the lower limit of the next class. Value corresponding to the lower class limit is excluded from that class and placed in the earlier class. For example, 20 will be placed in which class? Will be placed in this class, because it is a value corresponding to the upper limit of the class, and that is why we call it an exclusive class. Meaning of tabulation. The next way by which we can work with data is by tabulating it. Tabulation is a systematic presentation of numerical data in rows and columns. It is designed to simplify presentation and facilitate analysis. Such presentation facilitates comparison by bringing related information close to each other and helps in further statistical analysis and presentation. Let us understand the parts of a table. First and foremost, a table has a table number. Below it is the title of the table. Then is the caption, which is the head of all the columns, which displays what the columns are going to give us. Then is the stub or subheadings, which are these, and then comes the body of the table. Then there are these rows, a source and a footnote. All these are definitely a part of a good table. Once we have put data in a classified manner or in a tabular form, we need to present data in a diagrammatic and graphic presentation. Let us understand a few of these diagrammatic presentations. Diagrammatic presentation is a geometrical version of the data. As we can see, there are bars, there is a line graph, there is a pie chart. All these are diagrams and graphs. Diagrams present the facts in such a manner that just by glancing at them, one can understand the most complex data. Diagrams may be one-dimensional or two-dimensional and even three-dimensional. Bar diagrams are usually one-dimensional diagram. Only height or length of the diagram is relevant and not the width. A one-dimensional diagram, one-dimensional measurements are, for example, height or length, etc., are known as one-dimensional diagrams. The magnitude of the characteristics of this is shown by the length or height of the bar. One-dimensional diagrams are also called bar diagrams. Here we have a simple bar diagram. They are very simple to present. Only one type of variable can be presented. A simple bar can be drawn either on horizontal or vertical base. Bars must be of uniform thickness, as you can see here, and they should be placed at an equal distance from each other. So, this completes our understanding of a simple bar diagram. What about graphic presentation of data? Just like diagrams, graphs also provide a quick and easier way of understanding various trends. They facilitate comparison of two or more situations. One has to decide a convenient scale for each axis to accommodate the complete data given. The scale of the two axes can be different. We can see here how on a graph paper the simple bar graph is presented. Let us now recapitulate what we have learned. We have learned the meaning of the term data, various types of data. We have learned the difference between variables and attributes, the importance of data, classification and tabulation of data, and presentation of data. I hope, viewers, that with this your understanding of statistics is facilitated and you will be using all of these to make good reports and good projects in your study of economics. Thank you and all the best in your understanding of economics.